Hey, what's going on guys? This is Jake at That Fit Friend, and today I'll be comparing the Reebok Nano X4 to the Under Armour TriBase Reign 6. So 4 major differences between these two shoes include number 1, their heel to toe drop. So in the Reebok Nano X4, you have a heel to toe drop of 7 millimeters. This means that you're gonna have a little bit more heel in the shoe. So when you are standing in this shoe, your heel will be sitting higher than the forefoot to a greater degree. When you're training, if you're somebody that likes having a bit more heel due to mobility reasons or just for general training purposes, that can be a good thing. In the Reign 6, you have a heel to toe drop of 2 millimeters, and this is with the drop in midsole in the shoe. If you take out that drop in midsole, you'll have a 0 millimeter drop shoe, and you can put your own insole in. I'll talk about that later on. I also talk about that in my review. But if you like a flatter foot position when you're training, that 2 millimeter drop in the Reign 6 can be a really good call for your needs. The second major difference to note between these shoes is their midsoles and how that's going to influence this shoe's feel, and how you are training. So in the Reign 6, you don't have a traditional midsole, you now have a drop-in midsole. So in the prior 5 Reign models, you had a traditional midsole. In the Reign 6, you now have this drop-in midsole, which is essentially this insole that is designed to serve as your midsole. So in the back here, you have a little bit more of a denser foam, and then through the midfoot and forefoot, it's a little bit more plush and pliable, and it's a bit more bouncy. In this model now, you'd have a way more flexible sole. So with that out, you have a very flexible minimalist shoe. And with the insole in this model, I find that it walks a really fine line between being versatile and stable enough. In this shoe, I've deadlifted over 500, squatted over 400, and you do start to notice that midsole compress a little bit past 400, but not to a degree that really hinders your performance in this shoe. In the Reebok Nano X4, you have this Reebok Float Ride Energy Foam material. So this is consistent with the X1, X2, and X3, and this material is a little bit more dense. So when you are starting to break the shoe in, you'll likely notice that it feels a little bit denser. Up here in the forefoot, it is a little bit more flexible because we don't have as much material and there's no lift and run chassis system interjected into the shoe. But out of the box, this shoe will feel a little bit more dense compared to the Reign 6. So if you like a denser feeling midsole, this could be something to consider for the Nano X4 and Reign 6. The Reign 6 is a little bit more bouncy, a little bit more plush. That doesn't necessarily mean it's not great for lifting, but it's definitely a little bit more forgiving regarding its midsole feel, especially for plyometrics and whatnot. You also have the lift and run chassis system in the Nano X4. This is the system here that runs around the lateral and medial side of the shoe. There's a dome under here that compresses basically as you're lifting and then gives you a little bit more responsiveness when you're training, and that is interjected into the midsole. The third major difference to note about these shoes is their upper constructions. So in the Nano X4, you have a flex weave upper construction. This hugs the foot pretty well and it's decently lightweight. You also have some ventilation here on the midfoot, so you have these textile overlays, and then back here in the boot, you have a padded mesh and a bit more structure. Compared to the Nano X3, the Nano X4's upper I think does a better job of hugging the foot and giving you more breathability, and thus far it's been decently durable. Now how long will this upper be durable for a lot of abrasion? That is still up in the air. We need more data points to really test this, but overall, this upper I think does a pretty good job of giving you breathability and just general security. In the Reign 6, you have a chain link mesh here on the lateral side, and you have this warp material here on the medial side of the forefoot and midfoot. I really like the warp material because it doesn't really scuff. So as opposed to like in the Nano X4 here with this flex weave, this can start to like show signs of breakdown if you're having a lot of toe dragging. Generally speaking, the warp upper does a pretty good job at not showing that. Even though it might be getting beat up, sure, it doesn't show it to the greatest degree. So that is definitely something to consider with the upper in the Reign 6. You also have this extended heel counter here for additional support, and you have a lower profile boot with a padded mesh. So as you can see, the boot constructions are a little bit different. The Reign 6 sits a little bit lower under the lateral and medial malleolus, which is that big bony process on your ankle. The fourth major difference to note between these shoes is their outsole constructions. So over here in the Reign 6, you have a little bit more of an aggressive tread throughout the forefoot and heel in this model. This rubber I find grips the floor really well on turf and different materials, and you also have this TriBase tech here to give you additional structure and support in the midfoot. This outsole wraps around the entirety of the toe box, heel, midfoot on the medial and lateral side. So I really like this change, and overall, this rubber feels very grippy out of the box. It's not really a rubber that you have to kind of break in to get really biting and gripping well. In the Reebok Nano X4, you also have a full rubber outsole. This outsole does a good job with traction, and I don't really have traction issues with this model's outsole. You also have a wrap here on the lateral and medial side for additional rope climbing support. What I will say though is if the Nano is going to run into breakdown issues, For example, in the X3, something that some folks had was this outsole starting to peel away at the midfoot here. That could be something that could happen to certain models. It doesn't happen very often, but that is definitely something to keep an eye on. And you don't have an outsole wrap here over the forefoot on this midsole on the lateral and medial side. Not necessarily a bad thing, but if you are going to have issues with the outsole lipping away from the shoe, that's generally where it's going to happen. Overall, I do like the outsole better in the Reign 6. I think it gives you a bit more bite out of the box, and I like the wrap around the entirety of the shoe. But now let's talk about some performance differences between the Nano X4 and the Reign 6. All right, so now let's talk about some performance differences. Which model is going to be better for lifting? So both models can excel for lifting, but I would say factor in two considerations before you make a call on one of these shoes. So the first is the heel to toe drop, and I talked about this in my differences section, but in the Nano X4, the 7mm drop's going to give you more heel. So if you are somebody that likes to squat with a slightly elevated heel position, that would be something to consider with the Nano X4 because it might align better with your lifting mechanics compared to a flatter shoe like the Reign 6, which has a 2mm drop. The second thing that I would consider is the type of feel you want with your shoes when training. So for example, in the Nano X4, it's a little bit more rigid and built out. It feels much more structured. In the Reign 6, it's a lot more flexible. And so I'm somebody that likes to rotate between training shoes and barefoot shoes for lifting. And so the Reign 6 generally resonates really well with my wants of having something that's a bit more flexible and minimalist regarding its overall sole feel. So if you're somebody that wants a higher heel and a bit more of a built out shoe for lifting, the Nano X4 can be a great pick. And then if you're somebody that likes a flatter foot position and a little bit more of like a minimalist or flexible feeling, the Reign 6 can be great. Regarding general compression and stability, both these models will be very similar, so I don't think that's going to be an issue or a hang up for most lifters and athletes. Now, which model is better for CrossFit? I think both of these shoes will excel. If you like the Nano line and you like the Nano X3, I would say stick with the Nano X4. It's gonna be a pretty solid shoe. I feel like this model is upgraded with its upper construction. So the upper in this model, I think, hugs the foot a little bit better, and you have a higher tongue gusset, so it does give you more security in my opinion. And when it comes to being really versatile for different WODs, the Nano X4 does a pretty dang good job. This is also a model that works decently for shorter runs, for example, but then you could also train really heavy in the shoe and expect it to be stable. So the Nano X4 is a pretty well-rounded shoe in that vertical. The Reign 6 also does a really good job. I like the more aggressive outsole wrap on the shoe, plus the upper has proven to be pretty dang durable thus far, so I think the Reign 6 will last a while as well. Plus with its increased flexibility and grip in the outsole, I've really enjoyed them for sessions where I'm power cleaning or getting in heavily into the forefoot of the shoe and I want more grip. So that said, both these models can work for CrossFit, and again, I would honestly factor in the heel to toe drops and just the feel that you want out of your shoes. Both shoes are great, but they have very different feelings, and so factor that in when making your decision. Now, which model is better for cross training? And this is where I do think there's an edge to one of these shoes, and I'm giving that edge to the Reign 6. So when it comes to cross training, I really like shoes that feel very sock-like and athletic on the feet. They give me a lot of pliability, a lot of flexibility, and allow me to really dig into the forefoot. So for example, if I'm doing box jumps, broad jumps, skater strides, whatever it might be, I really like the outsole bite you get from the shoe and how pliable it is. I also like that you can take this drop-in midsole out, put a different insole in, and get a very minimalist feeling training shoe without necessarily having it be a full-on barefoot shoe. So that's something I think is really cool with the Reign 6 regarding its cross-training performance. The Nano X4 also works exceptionally well, and I think, for example, if you want a shoe for like Orange Theory or classes or something where you're gonna be doing a little bit of everything when it comes to strength work, some cardio work, some plyos, the Nano X4 can be a great option. Plus with this lift and run chassis system, it does have a better edge for running, I think, over the Reign 6. The Reign 6 can feel pretty heavy at times, so definitely something to consider there. But when it comes to cross training, both shoes work well. I like the Reign 6, but that's because I do love more minimalist and flexible shoes. The Nano X4 though also works exceptionally well. When it comes to short runs, I'm gonna give the edge to the Nano X4. And now both of these models work really well for sprints. And actually for sprints, I do kind of like the Reign 6 a little bit better. I have really enjoyed them for my sprints on the curved treadmill. But when it comes to 800 meters, 1, even 2 mile runs, I like the Nano X4 a little bit better. I think you get a little bit more range with the Nano X4 with its Float Ride Energy Foam midsole and the lift and run chassis system. The Reign 6 can feel a little bit heavy at times. So for my size 10 shoe here, we have a weight of like 14.25 ounces. And so it can feel a smidge heavy. However, I think the drop-in midsole can be pretty comfortable for like 800 meter runs. So both models can work for short runs, both excel for sprints. But if you are somebody that is doing 1 to 2 miles pre or post workout more often, I think the Nano X4 can sometimes be a better pick in that vertical. Now, which model is better for comfort, walking, and just general daily wear? Both these shoes shoes can work. I like them both for different reasons. The Nano X4 I think has a nice stylish look, has a bit more structure to it. So if you're somebody that likes a little bit more support with your shoes, or you like a bit more arch support, the Nano X4 can be a great option to explore. In the Reign 6, you have a much more minimalist feeling shoe, and with its drop in midsole, it does have a plusher ride. So this model I find to be a little bit easier to wear for longer periods of time, just because it does have that softer ride to it. So both models I think should work. In the Reign 6, it is worth noting you do have a more aggressive outsole wrap, which can be great for resisting breakdown from different elements and inclement weather. In the Nano X4, you do have foam here that sits pretty close to the ground, so keep an eye on that if you're wearing these out and about in dirty settings or like rainy days where you might have a couple puddles to have to hop through and whatnot. So keep that in mind. Overall though, both shoes can work for daily wear. I think it really just comes down to what you're after when it comes to fit and feel of your models. Hey, what's going on guys? This is Maui. He is the resident shoe dog here. He has asked me to tell you to subscribe to the channel if you like shoe content, fitness content, and puppies from time to time. But all that said, back to the review. When it comes to the price of the Nano X4 and the Reign 6, you can expect to pay between $140 and $150 USD for the Nano X4, depending on the colorway you go with. Just pick a price point, Reebok. Like, why do we have to do different price points for different colorways? Come on. With the Reign 6, you can expect to pay $130 USD. This is what the older Nanos used to cost and the older Metcons used to cost. However, the Reign 6 is also starting to creep up with its price point. So $140 to $150 versus $130. Both shoes I think are worth it depending on what you're really after. I don't think either or you're gonna have regrets with buying, especially if you do go with the more expensive option. So either or I think are pretty dang worth it for their prices. When discussing the sizing and fit of the Nano X4 versus the Reign 6, I think most folks should be safe going true to size in both these models. Now, when I say most folks, I'm talking about folks with narrow to medium to slightly wider feet. I have an E-width foot, and I find both these shoes to fit pretty true. Their lengths are both pretty consistent. However, there is a slight discrepancy between their fits. In the Nano X4, you actually have a slightly more aggressive toe box taper. And so out of the box, I found the Nano X4 to fit a little bit more snug than the Nano X3. Took about 1 to 2 workouts to really break in and feel good, but this flex weave will start to break in and accommodate your foot. So I would not necessarily size up in the Nano X4 unless you know you want more width, or if you have a wider foot. So if you have a double E-width foot, or if you have an E-width foot and you just like more room in your toe box, go up a half size in the Nano X4, but I think most folks should be safe going true to size in this model. In the Reign 6, I think most folks should be safe going true to size as well. However, if you have a thicker or more voluminous foot, you might want to go up a half size or just consider using a different insole in this shoe. You don't have a ton of upper volume in this model with the thicker drop in midsole, so definitely food for thought there for my thicker footed friends. Also for flatter feet, I think the Reign 6 feels a little bit more comfortable. It's less aggressive with the midfoot. In the Nano X4, you can have a pretty aggressive arch here if you have a flatter midfoot and you don't like any arch whatsoever in your training shoes. All right, now let's compare the weight, heel toe drop, and insole in the Nano X4 and the Reign 6. For my size 10 Nano X4, we have a weight of 13 ounces. For my size 10 Reign 6, we have a weight of 14.25 ounces. The heel to toe drop in the Reign 6 is 2 millimeters, and the insole is this thick, removable drop-in insole. So you can take this out, and if you do take this out and use your own insole, that will give you a 0 drop or 0 millimeter heel to toe drop in the Reign 6. In the Nano X4, you have a heel to toe drop of 7 millimeters, and you also have this thin foam removable insole that you can take out, as I struggle to grab it in this video. All right, now let's break down the construction differences between the Reign 6 and the Nano X4. Up here on the toe box, you have an extended outsole layer that wraps up on both. Now in the Reign 6, this is a lot more aggressive and it wraps the entirety of the toe box here. So as you can see, that outsole wraps, and you do have a break here in the lateral and medial side of the forefoot to give you more flexibility with this toe box here. You also have an extended outsole in the Nano X4, but it's not as aggressive as you can see. And then looking at the upper constructions in the Nano X4 and the Reign 6, in the Nano X4 you have a flex weave upper, and you have some textile synthetic overlays on the medial and lateral midfoot here. This is designed to give you a bit more ventilation and breathability in this model. And then back here in the boot, you have a padded mesh, and you also have this lift and run chassis system that sits lower in this model compared to the Nano X3, where it came up a little bit higher. Looking at the midfoot, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 core eyelets that go up. You have 2 loops here for security on the tongue. You also have a pretty high tongue gusset in this model, which is a new feature of the Nano X4, and the tongue itself is a padded mesh. In the Reign 6, you have a warp upper here on the medial side of the forefoot and midfoot. You have this chain link mesh on the lateral side, and then you have a padded mesh here around the heel. You also have this heel counter to give you additional boot security and an external tab here to help pull this shoe on. Looking at the midfoot, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 core eyelets that go up in this model. You have a tongue gusset, and then you also have 2 loops here for security in the Reign 6. Both shoes I feel like do a pretty good job with overall tongue security and midfoot security, and then you also have a padded mesh tongue in the Reign 6 itself. Looking at the midsoles, once again, in the Reign 6, the midsole is this thick drop-in midsole. So you have a bit more of a denser foam here, but it's really not that dense to where it takes away from the comfort of the shoe. Up here through the midfoot and forefoot, it's a little bit more pliable and plush. There's a good amount of flexibility with the shoe. And then when this is taken out, like this shoe has a ton of flexibility. There's basically a very thin layer of material separating your foot from the floor, and that's just that rubber outsole and that cloth footbed in this shoe. Looking at the Nano X4, you have the flow ride energy foam that goes throughout the entirety of the shoe's midsole. Its stack height is a bit higher than the Reign 6. Also, it's worth noting there's a bit more toe spring in the Nano X4 versus the Reign 6. So if you like a flatter shoe, once again, Reign 6 is going to be your call. And then looking at the outsoles, you have a full rubber outsole in the Nano X4. You have some grooves up here for flexibility in the forefoot, and then you have a circle back here that indicates where that dome is in the lift and run chassis system. This outsole does wrap up a little bit on the lateral and medial side for additional support when it comes from a lateral context, but then also rope climbing durability support. In the Reign 6, you have a full rubber outsole. You do have a little bit of a TPU here for the TriBase tech, but I don't think that's going to hinder the grip in this model. At least it hasn't hindered my grip while training yet. The ridges in the forefoot and midfoot are a lot more aggressive in this shoe, and this outsole layer wraps up around the entirety of this model. Now, it is worth noting back here on the boot, this is rubber material, so it doesn't have the most slide on walls, whereas in the Nano X4, this TPU back here with the lift and run chassis system gives you a bit more of a slide in these shoes. And then once again, you do have that thin foam removable insole in the Nano X4, but if you have additional questions on either of these shoes constructions, drop a comment down below. All right guys, that wraps up my comparison of the Nano X4 versus the Reign 6. Both are really great shoes. However, if I had to give the edge to one of these models that I just kind of resonate with better, I'm actually gonna go with the Reign 6 this year. And this is, I think, the first year that Under Armour has taken the edge over Reebok, at least for me personally. If you have additional questions on either of these shoes or which you should go with, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always, y'all, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.